She said it like a warning. Not loud, not cold, just quiet enough that I almost believed her. I don't do this anymore. But her voice trembled at the end, and that small hesitation ruined the lie completely. It started with a conversation that should have meant nothing. A late evening, rain tapping against the window, and a room that felt too still for two people who weren't supposed to feel anything. She was standing by the counter, a mug in her hand, eyes distant, like she was remembering someone who once made her laugh. I shouldn't have stared. But I did. The kind of stare you think you can hide until she looks up and catches it. Her lips curved, not into a smile, but something softer. A knowing look. Like she'd seen this before. Like she already knew how it might end. You're staring again, she said. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe I'm just listening. To what? To you. Even when you're not saying anything. That was the first time silence felt heavier than words. She looked away then, running her thumb along the edge of the mug, slow, thoughtful. There was a pause before she spoke again, her voice quieter now. You shouldn't say things like that. Why not? Because people might start believing you mean them. I wanted to tell her I did. But instead, I took a step closer, just enough for her perfume to cut through the air. It wasn't strong, but familiar, like something from another life. Her breathing changed, subtle, uneven. She noticed it too, because she took half a step back, bumping into the table behind her. The cup wobbled, spilling a drop of coffee onto her wrist. Without thinking, I reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. Her skin was warm. Soft in that way that makes time stop for a second too long. I could feel the tremor in her fingers before she looked up again, eyes wide, half defiance, half surrender. Don't, she whispered. But it wasn't a command. It was a confession. The space between us vanished like it had been waiting all night for that single moment. I could feel her breath against my mouth, hesitant, sharp, almost trembling. The kind of closeness that doesn't need to touch to burn. She leaned in just enough for her forehead to brush mine. Her voice came out like a breath she'd been holding too long. You're too young to understand what this costs. Then teach me, I said. Something in her eyes cracked then, not sadness, not guilt, something far deeper. A loneliness that had been dressed up as control for years. Her fingers tightened around mine. And then, a sound. The doorknob turned. She froze. For a moment we didn't move. Didn't breathe. Only the rain filled the silence between us. Her hand slipped from mine, slow, careful, like pulling away from something she didn't want to let go of. She turned her head toward the door, jaw tense, eyes darting, torn between staying and running. Then she looked back once, lips parting, wanting to say something she never did. The door opened. And everything that could have happened next stopped right there. The door had barely closed before the silence came back, heavier this time, filled with everything we didn't say. She stood by the window again, arms crossed, eyes fixed somewhere far beyond the glass. I could still see the outline of her reflection, her lips pressed together, her shoulders stiff like she was holding herself together piece by piece. Who was that? I asked softly. Does it matter? Her tone wasn't cold. Just tired. Like someone who had run from too many questions already. I didn't push. I just nodded and sat down, pretending to look at my phone while watching her from the corner of my eye. The rain had stopped, but droplets still clung to the window, blurring the street lights into soft gold. She reached up to tuck her hair behind her ear, her fingers trembling slightly, and for some reason, that small imperfection made her feel more real than ever. Finally, she turned toward me. You shouldn't be here. I didn't plan to be. She smiled faintly. That's what makes it worse. I didn't know what to say. So I watched instead, the way her hands fidgeted, the way her chest rose and fell slower than before. Every movement felt like it meant something. After a moment, she walked closer and sat across from me. Her perfume lingered again, faint, floral, a reminder of everything I shouldn't want. You remind me of someone, she said after a pause. Someone I used to know a long time ago. He made me believe in things that didn't last. Maybe they didn't last because you stopped believing, I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes met mine, sharp, steady, but full of quiet ache. Or maybe I just learned that some things aren't meant to. She looked away, exhaling through her nose, then whispered, You shouldn't look at me like that. How am I looking? Like you don't see the years between us. I don't, I said. Not when you look at me like that. She froze, and for a heartbeat neither of us moved. Then, like the universe wanted to mock us, thunder rumbled outside, deep and distant. She laughed softly under her breath, shaking her head. This is ridiculous. Maybe, I said, leaning forward slightly. But it doesn't feel that way. Her hand brushed the table, and mine followed, just close enough for our fingers to almost touch. I could see her hesitation, the tiny movement of her wrist as if she was fighting herself. Her voice dropped to a whisper. People talk, you know. About women like me. I don't care what they say. That's because they won't say it about you. There it was, the truth beneath all her calmness. The fear of being seen, of being judged for wanting something that didn't fit the world's idea of right. I reached out then, slow enough to let her stop me. But she didn't. My fingertips brushed hers, and she closed her eyes for just a second too long. When she opened them again, the mask was gone. For the first time, she didn't step back. And in that tiny, fragile moment, with thunder echoing outside and her breath trembling in the space between us, something unspoken passed through her eyes. Not surrender. Not control. Something that felt dangerously close to hope. The morning light slipped through the half-open blinds, painting her living room in soft gold. She was making coffee, humming faintly under her breath, as if pretending last night hadn't happened, the almost touch, the words that hovered and never landed. I stood near the counter, watching the steam curl from her mug. You're quiet today, I said. So are you. She didn't look up. Maybe that's safer. The air felt heavier than it should have. I could hear the faint ticking of the clock, the hum of the fridge, every sound reminding me how close we were, how impossible it was to stay still. Then came a knock. Sharp, sudden. She froze. My heart jumped. Don't move, she whispered, barely breathing. The knock came again, louder this time. I backed toward the hallway, pulse quickening. She smoothed her hair, straightened her shirt, and opened the door just enough to reveal a familiar voice. Hey, you left your folder at the office, the man said casually. Her coworker. Older. Polite smile. Curious eyes. Thanks, she said quickly, taking the folder and keeping her body halfway between us. You didn't have to bring it. It's on my way. He hesitated, peering past her shoulder. You okay? You look flustered. She laughed softly, too softly. Long night, that's all. When the door finally closed, she leaned against it, eyes shut, chest rising and falling too fast. That was close, I murmured. She turned to me, her voice unsteady. It shouldn't have to be. Silence stretched again. I could feel her heartbeat in the room, the leftover tension from a danger that hadn't passed, just paused. Do you regret it? I asked quietly. Her eyes lifted to mine, calm but burning. I regret wanting something I shouldn't. Then stop wanting it, I said, though my voice barely held. She smiled, that small, impossible smile that always broke through my logic. You say that like it's easy. I took a step forward. So did she. Neither of us said a word. Her hand brushed the counter beside mine, close enough that the warmth reached through the air. The smell of her perfume, faint vanilla and rain, made my throat tighten. Someone will find out, she said, almost to herself. Then let them, I whispered. She looked up sharply, the kind of look that said, don't make me believe you. For a second, everything in her expression shifted, fear, want, defiance, tangled together in silence. Her lips parted, but the words never came. I reached up without thinking, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She didn't pull away. The moment stretched, eyes locked, breaths unsteady. I could feel it, the space between us shrinking, the question neither of us dared to ask. And then, right before it could happen, before the silence could break, her phone buzzed. She stepped back instantly, like waking from a spell. But even as she turned away, I caught it, that brief glance over her shoulder, the one that said this isn't over. And I knew, no matter how much we tried to resist, we were already past the point of pretending. The rain had started without warning, soft at first, then relentless, drumming against the windows of her quiet house. We stood in the doorway, watching it pour, neither of us willing to be the first to move. She exhaled slowly. You should go before it gets worse. I didn't. Couldn't. Her voice was steady, but her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for the doorknob. Don't make this harder. I'm not the one who's pretending it's easy, I said, and the words slipped out before I could stop them. She froze. Turned. Her eyes met mine, tired, searching, and something else she tried to bury too fast. You don't understand, she said, her voice breaking just enough to make it real. This, whatever it is, it can happen. Then why are you shaking? That did it. She looked away, her shoulders rising like she was bracing for a storm inside her chest. The air between us changed, tighter, heavier. I stepped closer, close enough to see the faint line of worry between her brows, the raindrops still clinging to her hair. You think I don't feel it? She whispered. Every time you're near me, I forget who I'm supposed to be. Then don't remember, I said. Her breath hitched. I lifted my hand slowly, letting her stop me if she wanted, and brushed the wet strand of hair from her cheek. Her skin was cool under my fingers, but the warmth between us was almost unbearable. You shouldn't look at me like that, she murmured. Then stop being this close. Neither of us moved. The thunder rolled outside, low and distant, like it was holding its breath with us. She stepped closer, maybe out of anger, maybe something else, until the edge of her coat brushed against mine. You think you know what you want, she said, her voice low, trembling. But you're too young to understand what it costs. Try me. The words came out quiet, almost a dare. She laughed once, not from amusement, but from disbelief. You'll regret this. I'll risk it. Her hand rose halfway, then faltered, fingertips hovering near my chest, so close I could feel their warmth even without touch. The silence after that felt electric, the kind that hums in your bones, that tells you everything is about to change. Her eyes softened, full of something fragile and furious all at once. You shouldn't have come back tonight. And yet you didn't tell me to leave. A drop of water slipped from her hair onto her lips. I wanted to kiss it away, and I think she knew. She leaned in, just slightly, just enough for the world to disappear, until her breath touched my jaw like a secret. Tell me to stop, she whispered. I didn't. The rain pounded harder, drowning out everything else, except the heartbeat between us. And right before our lips met, her phone rang. Once. Twice. She pulled back, her chest rising fast, eyes wide. Neither of us spoke. The call kept ringing. And I knew, if she answered it, everything would change. The silence that followed was sharper than thunder. She didn't answer it, but she didn't look at me either. Her hand hovered near her chest, clutching something invisible, like she was holding her breath, or holding back. Who was it? I asked. She didn't move. No one. I almost believed her, until I saw the faint blue light flashing again on the table. A name appeared before she turned it over, face down. You don't have to hide it, I said quietly. She laughed under her breath, brittle, nervous. You think everything means something. Sometimes a call is just a call. Then why do you look like you're about to fall apart? Her lips parted, but nothing came out. The air between us stretched thin, too much said, too much waiting. Then she stepped away. Not far, just enough to break the pull that had been holding us in place since the rain started. Because, she whispered, you shouldn't have heard what you did last night. I frowned. Heard what? Her shoulders tensed. She turned her back, facing the window streaked with rain. You were in the hallway. The door wasn't closed all the way. The pieces started fitting together. Her sudden distance this morning, the way she avoided my eyes. I didn't mean to, you did, she said softly, cutting me off. You heard me talking to him. Him? Her voice broke when she said it. My husband. The word hit harder than I expected, not jealousy exactly, but the sound of something cracking open that I didn't know was fragile. She finally faced me, her eyes red-rimmed but steady. We haven't been together in months. Not really. But it doesn't matter, because saying it out loud makes it real. And you shouldn't be part of that. The room felt smaller. The rain louder. I don't care what it makes me, I said. You should. I took a step toward her. She took one back. Every time I moved closer, she moved away, until her back hit the wall, and there was nowhere left to go. Her hands pressed flat against the surface behind her, trembling. This isn't who I am. Then why do you keep letting me in? Her throat worked as she swallowed hard. Because you look at me like I'm still someone worth wanting. The words hung in the air, trembling between us. I reached up, brushed my fingers against her wrist. She didn't stop me this time, just closed her eyes, like the touch was something she'd missed for too long. I didn't mean to listen, I whispered. But I did. And I heard how sad you sounded. Her lips parted, a shaky breath escaping. Then you know why this has to end. I shook my head. No. It's exactly why it can't. She looked at me then, not angry, not afraid, just undone. Outside, the storm eased. Inside, everything else was just beginning. She took one last step toward me, her voice barely a whisper. Then prove it. The storm had passed, but the air still felt heavy, thick with something that refused to fade. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the ceiling fan, moving slower than time itself. She stood by the window again, arms crossed, the faintest tremor running through her fingers. The fading light brushed against her skin, soft and gold, catching the edge of her hair as it slipped over her shoulder. I stood behind her, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her, but not close enough to touch. Every inch between us felt deliberate, a fragile space where choice still existed. You shouldn't be here, she said, but her voice didn't sound like she meant it. I know. Then why are you? I hesitated. Because every time I try to walk away, I still end up here. She turned her head slightly, just enough for me to see her reflection in the glass, her eyes meeting mine, uncertain, exhausted, wanting. I told you it can't work, she said. You're too young. I've made too many mistakes. Maybe this isn't one of them. Her breath caught. She turned fully now, facing me, the distance between us no longer safe. Her eyes searched mine, desperate for something to hold on to. You don't understand what you're asking for. I took a step closer. Then help me understand. She didn't back away. Her hand hovered in the air like she wanted to reach for me, then dropped halfway, uncertain. You think this is easy for me? She whispered. You think I don't feel every look, every silence, every time you almost touch me? Her voice cracked. I can't afford to want you. I closed the distance, just inches now. The heat of her breath touched my skin. Then don't want me, I said softly. Her eyes darkened. It's not that simple. It never is. The silence that followed was louder than words. Her hand found my chest, light at first, as if testing whether I was real, then firmer, trembling. I could feel her pulse against my skin, fast and unsteady. You don't know what happens after this, she said, her voice low, breaking apart between syllables. I don't care about after. Her laugh was barely there, soft and sad. You will. I took her hand, the one pressed against me, and held it still. Then let me be wrong. Her lips parted, her breath unsteady. The world outside seemed to vanish. No noise, no time, just the weight of this moment pressing in from all sides. Then, finally, she looked at me the way she hadn't before, not afraid, not hesitant, but resigned to everything she tried to deny. The distance disappeared. It wasn't loud, or sudden, or cinematic. It was a slow collapse, years of resistance falling quiet between us. When she finally pulled back, her voice was barely a whisper. Now you know. And I did completely. There was no going back. You said, white heavy checkmark prompt 7, the conclusion, emotional resolution, 500 words, writing prompt, close the story in a sensual but satisfying way. Instructions, resolve all threads, fears, doubts, and the age gap hesitation. Let the ending feel warm, believable, and sensual. Maybe a long hug, a hand intertwined, a forehead kiss, or sitting close together at last. Avoid overformality. Keep it natural and human. End with them together in a clear, emotionally fulfilling resolution. Close with these engagement questions for YouTube. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?